Good morning. Welcome to the King's Report 2 News Hour. Ninth day of the 12th month, 16th year of Changi. Tim Elder sitting in for the second king of Changu, Kyungji Moon. Let's go. Take our sojourn around the kingdom right now in Chongpyeong, Tennessee. Right now, it looks like it's 9 degrees. A little bit chilly, I suppose. Clear skies, and then mostly sunny today and cold. Breezy this afternoon, and bitter cold. High of 34, though. So it's going to get above freezing later on. Tonight, mostly cloudy and cold at 20 degrees. And in father's hometown, Jeongju, Korea, North Pyongan Province, Korea, 10 degrees and clear right now. Real feel of 2 degrees. Getting down to 2 degrees below zero tonight. And then tomorrow, cold with hazy sunshine, high of 23. At the Cheonggung Palace in Northeast Pennsylvania, clear and 5 degrees right now. And mostly cloudy and frigid, intermittent snow and flurries this afternoon with little or no accumulation, high of 16. Tonight getting down to 0 degrees even there, partly cloudy and very cold. At the Liberty Rock RV Park and Campground in Limestone County, Texas, partly cloudy and 16 currently. Yeah, that's Fahrenheit. Texas, in the middle of Texas. 16 degrees. Partly sunny and cold, bitter cold. Be sure to wear layers, it says. High of 41 degrees. In other words, 2 short sleeve shirts, I guess. I don't know. Tonight, clear and cold. Low of 23. At the Suncheon Palace in Korea, it is currently 30 degrees and clear. Tonight, getting down to 20 degrees, colder with increasing cloudiness. Tomorrow, after a cloudy start, sunshine returns, high of 41. At the Gunma Palaces in Japan, 43, mostly clear. 30 degrees for a low tonight, partly cloudy. Tomorrow, cooler with partial sunshine, 46 for a high. And then in Guangzhou, China, yes, we can dream. Yes, 73 and clear. And then tonight, mainly clear, low of 58. Tomorrow, hazy sunshine, high of 72. I saw a story in Australia. It's very hot there. How hot is it in Australia today? Well, Sydney, it's 70 degrees with a high, looks like of 84, but somewhere I think it was a whole lot hotter I saw here. Maybe this is it. Large parts of Australia forecast to swelter through week-long heat wave. Maybe this was it. Let's take a look, just to make us feel warmer. Okay.
First of all, can you just...
Oh, it's a video. Okay. Don't want to do that. Don't want to get dinged. Okay. All right. So, yeah, but I did see something where it was actually more than 40 degrees or something. Anyway, enough of that. Father's Word, Earthly Life in the Spirit World, Chapter 2. Chapter 2. We're somewhere in Chapter 2. Okay, but this is a long section. Somewhere in Chapter 2. Anyway, I don't know. So, Father, Chapter 2, Earthly Life in the Spirit World. And the title of Chapter 2 is Death and the Spirit World. And it looks like we're in, okay, it's a very long section, whatever it is. Without children, the kingdom of heaven cannot expand. So therefore, blessed central families must not restrict must not restrict the number of children while they're on the earth. In other words, Father was speaking here in 1990, and just similar to China. China had the one-child policy, and I remember in Korea there were various stages of sort of the government encouraging people not to have too many children. And at one point they were saying, oh, you can have one son and one daughter, and that's enough. And then later on, they said, oh, don't discriminate between boys and girls, just have one. And um, I think I've mentioned this before, but when my wife and I started having children, women could go to a pharmacy and pick up a kit. The kit consisted of a special thermometer and um, and also a sheet of paper that was graph paper. Uh, Maybe if you were old enough, you remember using graph paper at school, where you had little tiny boxes. And the idea was that women were supposed to keep the thermometer by their bedside, and then the first thing in the morning, uh, before they did anything, before they got up or anything like that, they would reach over and take their temperature. And uh, when the temperature went up, then and then they would also, plot the temperature on the graph paper every morning. And when the temperature went up, you knew that the woman was supposed to know that this was when she was beginning to ovulate. She was now fertile. And so the government was trying to tell people, okay, when the temperature goes up, then don't have sex. Well, my wife and I, we got a little bit of a later start than some people, because we both of us joined the church a little bit. We were both what 20. Let's see. Anyway, of course, at that time you had to be in the church for 3 years before you could even be a candidate for the blessing. And so we were in our late 20s, I suppose. No, we were already in our early 30s by the time we were blessed and ready to have children. So we were in a hurry. So we used it for the opposite purpose. When the temperature went up, we got busy. Okay. So, but anyway, Father here is saying a blessed family should not restrict the number of children. Um, uh, and he says in the next sentence, this is in 1990, 굶어 죽어도 다 영계에 갑니다. All right, shall I translate that? Even if you starve to death, you'll still all go to the spirit world. Even if 굶어 죽더라도 사랑 가운데서 굶어 죽으면 전국 가는 것입니다. Even if you starve to death, if you starve to death in an atmosphere of love, you will go to heaven. That's what he says. 그렇기 때문에 사탄 세계에는 산하 제한을 하지만 통일교회에서는 산하 제한해서는 안 됩니다. So therefore, the satanic world limits birth, or practices birth control, I guess, or yeah, I guess practicing birth control, as you can see, put it that way. The satanic world practices birth control, but the Unification Church, in the Unification Church, we must not practice birth control. 선생님이 뜻을 위해 고생했지만 굶어 죽지 않았습니다. And Father 고생했지만, suffered is kind of a strong word. 고생 means work hard or suffer, kind of in between those two. But I did not starve to death. 굶어 죽는 자리에 가서도 살 수 있습니다. Even if I go to a position where I would starve to death, I can live. I can survive. 그런 훈련이 다 돼 있습니다. I've been trained in that way. Okay? Yes. Praise God. Praise God for it. All right, so all you kids, get busy after you watch this video. Okay. Or you can, it's up to you. Yes, uh, but that's uh, there's let's face it, there's a lot of fun in the process of having kids. And it's got a little problem going on here. Okay. Yes. Anyway, so Be fruitful and multiply. All right. Be fruitful and multiply. Lots and lots and lots. Okay, let's go and see what's happening. So right now, all these sort of anti-Trump, I guess you can say, yeah, well, yeah, anti-Trump European leaders and Canadian leaders are all sort of lining up to go to Beijing and kowtow to the emperor there. Carney of Canada was there, I think was recently anyway. And today, Finland's prime minister is there, and uh, this is what they're doing, right? Because they're all figuring that okay, well, the U.S. is toast, and China is the new power, and we all want to make sure that we're on good terms with China. So there we go. This is a Finnish Prime Minister. What's his name? Orpo, Petteri Orpo, shaking hands with Beijing and Xi Jinping with Beijing. January 27th, that would be today. So this doesn't look like a guy who was in the middle of a coup d'etat, does it? Yeah. And then later this week, I think maybe day after tomorrow, Keir Starmer of the UK, Prime Minister there, is also going to arrive. And then Germany's uh, chancellor is also going to Beijing. So it's really, it's actually uh, disgusting to watch. Anyway, here Beijing is willing to enhance mutual trust, strengthen communication, and deepen economic cooperation with Finland. Chinese President Xi Jinping declared as he welcomed Finnish Prime Minister Petteri Orpo in Beijing. Who's writing this? Well, this is Al Jazeera. Orpo was in the Chinese capital on Tuesday to meet Xi and other leaders as part of a 4-day visit to the country that began on Sunday. And during their meeting, Xi told Orpo that Finnish businesses were welcome to swim freely in the vast Chinese market. How many people have fallen for that lie, huh? How many people have fallen for that lie? Yes, swim freely, but then, whoop, there's sharks in this water. They discover after they get there. Uh, oh, yes, technology. They're stealing our technology. Oh, they're imprisoning our CEOs. Oh no, they're putting tariffs on. Oh my goodness. Yes, there's sharks in those waters, but you can swim freely as long as you can swim with the sharks. She also expressed readiness to work with Finland to firmly uphold the international system. Oh no, China has already destroyed the international system, and they're blaming it on Trump, the destruction on Trump, right? With the United Nations based on international law. Well, wait a second. China is ignoring international law with respect to the South China Sea, adding that Beijing was seeking to promote an equitable and orderly multipolar world. Haha. Yes. My goodness, these people, are they really so gullible? Are they really so gullible? I guess they are. I guess they are. I guess they are. All right. So anyway, it's a little bit sad to see all these countries going there to kowtow to the Chinese emperor. Meanwhile, let's see what is actually going on there. Purge of top Chinese general throws military into turmoil. This is the NBC News. Raises question about Taiwan. This is a reminder coming directly from President Xi Jinping that political loyalty stands well before combat readiness, one analyst told NBC News. That's exactly what I said, right? I said yesterday, I think that, yeah, it was yesterday, that one of the fundamental understanding in all communist systems is that ideological purity is more important than professional competence, right? And of course, professional competence in the case of a military translates into combat readiness. So, so this guy, this is the guy that was recently purged. His name is Chang Yao. What was his name? Zhang Zhao Yaosha, yeah? Yosha, Zhang Yosha. And they were standing together just last year and seemed that everything was going well. But then suddenly now Zhang Youxia is under arrest somewhere, and as one analyst put it, he's being sweated. He's being sweated right now to name all the people that are loyal to him so that they can go after them as well. The downfall of China's top general, second in command, and once a close ally of President Xi Jinping, has thrown the leadership of the country's military into turmoil and raised questions about Taiwan's future. The Chinese Defense Ministry said in a statement Saturday that General Zhang Youxia was under seriously trampled on and undermined the system of responsibility under the military commission's chairman, Xi himself. The pair had also gravely fostered political and corruption problems that weakened the party's absolute leadership over the military. Da, 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 da. So anyway, regardless of what they say, the thing is that she wants or feels that he needs to have absolute control. Why? Why? Well, he's paranoid. That's one thing. But also, people have pointed out that right now Xi Jinping is already serving a third unprecedented term as president and as general secretary and chairman of the Central Military Commission. And then next year, he's already declared himself. Well, he's gotten rid of term limits. There used to be a term limit of 2 terms for president, 5 years, 10 years. But he got rid of that already, and so now he's sort of doing the extra innings already, and he wants to go a 4th term, right? But that's never happened in the history of history of China, or the People's Republic of China, the Communist China. And so he wants to make sure that there's not going to be any opposition to that, right? So anybody who not only is not 100% loyal now, okay, of course, those people are going to be targeted, but also those who might in the future become somehow a little bit, only 99% loyal when it comes time for him to be uh, approved for a 4th term. Those people also apparently now are also being purged. So because Xi Jinping wants to stay in power, because hey, listen, when you lose power in a dictatorship system, uh, bad things can happen, because the next guy may not love you. He may not love you. And you don't want that to happen to you. And so, yes. So it looks like Xi Jinping intends to, be sort of dictator for life, and he wants to make sure that happens, and no one's going to get in his way of that. I think that's what's going on here. Okay, it doesn't mention that in this article from NBC News, but they give the history of his purges and so forth and so on. Okay, and this guy says that Zhang was one of the oldest high-ranking commanders who fought in the war against Vietnam, which China lost, by the way. But anyway, we're not going to quibble with that. So he knows very well what it means to wage a war compared to the majority of the PLA that are just training to be combat ready. His successor will show what is going to look like a PLA that is first and foremost politically aligned with the party and by definition with President Xi himself, he said. So I already said yesterday that people that I've been looking at and reading are telling me that in the near term, Taiwan is probably safer than it was a week ago, but in the mid to longer term, it is just all the more certain now that there will be a military invasion or some sort of military operation to take over Taiwan, because Xi Jinping has made it absolutely clear that he wants Taiwan one way or another, And some people in Taiwan are willing to go along and say, okay, well, you know, if push comes to shove, let's go ahead and surrender. There is that opinion in certain sectors of Taiwan, but then there are other people who are absolutely opposed to that, and uh, it's kind of an interesting split in Taiwan. Um, both both opinions exist. Right now, the president, of course, is of the opinion that Taiwan will never surrender, that Taiwan is an independent country. But the opposition party, which actually controls a majority in the legislature, is of the other opinion that Taiwan should do everything it can to get along with Beijing. Let's go down. Uh, Let me pull up a story right now. Uh, okay, here we go. Let's take a look at this. This is from the Taipei Times, and let's take a look and we'll see what this says here. KMT, that's Kuomintang. This is the main opposition party. Let me get rid of this. Okay. Chinese Nationalist Party, KMT Vice, or Kuomintang in Chinese, Vice Chairman yesterday denied allegations that Beijing asked the party to increase mutual trust by boycotting the defense budget bills, saying they were fabricated statements. So right now, the president of Taiwan is trying to increase the defense budget so that Taiwan can better defend itself against a possible invasion. Whereas the main opposition party is saying, no, 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 let's not do that, because if we do, then we will just, make Beijing angry, make the Communist Party angry, and we don't want to do that. We want to appease them. Beijing reportedly asked the KMT to take concrete actions, such as hindering the passage of the defense budget, to resume the KMT Chinese Communist Party forum and facilitate a potential meeting between KMT chairwoman and Chinese President Xi Jinping. So KMT, Kuomintang, or the Chinese Nationalist Party, wants to have this sort of KMT Chinese Communist Party forum, right, to resume this. Apparently, this was happening in the past. It's not happening now. They want to resume it, and so, but the Chinese Communist Party is putting some conditions on it, saying, okay, if you want to do that, then you need to hinder the passage of the budget, the defense budget, so that Taiwan cannot increase its defense spending. The KMT would consider legal actions though, but the KMT says, no, 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 that's not true. Will consider legal actions against such allegations, which is cognitive warfare that aims to depict the party's efforts to review the defense budget as an attempt to meet with Xi, Xiao said. Okay. So the defense budget is about $37.5 billion, $39.7 billion, but arms procurement from the U.S. only required $300 billion. I think the word only maybe is misplaced here. Or I don't, something's wrong with that sentence, obviously. Okay. The cabinet last year approved $1.25 trillion new Taiwan dollars. That's the $40 billion, right? With an 8-year span, and sent it to the legislature for review. However, opposition lawmakers have been excluding the bill from agenda since December 2nd last year, saying the executive yuan, that's the name of their legislature, has not incorporated the increased military and police pay in its general budget draft. The KMT's exchanges with China and the potential Cheng-Xi meeting are irrelevant to defense budgets, Xiao said, adding that associating the budget issue with the party's visit to China was a malicious attempt to influence this year's elections. So you can see that there's a lot of back and forth going on. about this issue between the two parties and the two sort of groups of opinion. So on one side, oh yeah, we want to have a forum with the Chinese Communist Party. We want the KMT and the Chinese Communist Party to be getting together. And it's rather unusual, don't you think, that the opposition party of one country, I don't know, the local Chinese ambassador will come knocking on my door if I say country. But it's that's what it is. Taiwan is a country. But the main opposition party of that country is making dealings with the ruling governing party of another country. That's rather unusual, I would say. Um, of course, but this is one of the ways in which the Communist Party is infiltrating Taiwan and spreading its influence in Taiwan in the hopes that Taiwan will simply uh, choose to be incorporated into the People's Republic of China, that's Communist China, without China actually having to fire any guns. So we'll see. So, but we need to pray, I think, for the people of Taiwan that they can really choose freedom over slavery. Right? And here, this is South China Morning Post. KMT chair hopes to take peace message to Beijing while on political tightrope. Right, but South China Morning Post again it's published in Hong Kong, but it's a kind of a mouthpiece now of the Chinese Communist Party. Um, and so yeah, so it's a tough situation. But anyway, if that kind of a co-opting effort does not work, then and I don't think it will work, then uh, Xi Jinping will definitely order the military to stage an invasion. But now, if all the competent generals have been removed, and then new young people being promoted because of their ideological purity or their, shall we say, loyalty to Xi Jinping himself, to Xi Jinping personally, I would say more than that, not just to the Communist Party, but to the Xi Jinping personally, if that is now the standard of being promoted to general, then how effective will that kind of a military be, right? So, well, I guess we're probably going to find out. Maybe, um, well, next year or the year after, perhaps. I suspect. Assuming that God does not and True Father does not intervene somehow, and by intervening I mean, you know, well, recently, just in the last couple of days, one of the leading leftists in Korea was on a trip to Vietnam, and he just keeled over and died. Yeah, while he was in Vietnam, right? And they're making a big to do about it. And the guy was, they sent a special plane there to bring his body back and everything. And the government of Vietnam is expressing condolences, and China is also expressing condolences because he was one of the leading leftists in Korea. So, no, um, well, father can step in at any time. Step in at any time. We'll see what happens. See what happens. See what happens there. Okay. All right. Let's see here. Interesting. On here, Denmark and Greenland leaders hold European talks after U.S. deal. So apparently, this thing about U.S. Um, gaining, I don't know exactly what the end result is going to be here, but I don't want to say acquire Greenland, but somehow increase their uh, I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is. It's all sort of hush hush, isn't it? Because they're not really telling us what they're doing. Denmark and Greenland's leaders are in Berlin and Paris this week to shore up European backing after a framework deal with the US paved the way for negotiations on the Arctic island. So there you go. Negotiations have begun. So President Trump is, I would say, more than halfway, right? Any salesman knows that the sale begins when the customer says no. And so Denmark said no, and Greenland said no, no, no. But then now negotiations have been, or at least have paved the way. The way to negotiations has been paved. It's not just a dirt road, it's a paved road. Okay. In Berlin, Mette Frederiksen and Jens Fredrik Nielsen will attend the Welt Economic Summit on Tuesday and meet policymakers and diplomats to discuss the geopolitical situation, according to a statement from the Danish government. It comes after US President Donald Trump and NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte last week agreed to a framework over Greenland, with discussions expected to focus on areas including mining rights, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization's role on the island, and the defense relationship between Denmark and the US. So look at that, look at that, look at that. Already concrete issues are being brought up, and negotiations are on. Wow. So this is the art of the deal, folks. This is the art of the deal. Yeah. Trump has said he won't use force to take over the territory, which is part of the Kingdom of Denmark, but has its own government. Frederiksen and Nielsen will travel to Paris for a working lunch with French President Emmanuel Macron on Wednesday. They are set to discuss security issues in the Arctic and the economic and social development of Greenland, which France and the European Union are ready to support, the LC said in a statement. And they were not ready to support this until President Trump brought up the whole issue. Remember that in the first term, people were just laughing? They're not laughing anymore. They're not laughing. No. Now they're negotiating. This is amazing to watch. Yeah, this is why President Trump is who he is. On Monday, Frederiksen reiterated Denmark seeks a permanent NATO presence in Greenland, similar to the Baltic Sentry operation in the Baltic Sea. Okay. All right, so they're putting out their demands. Okay, yeah, that's part of negotiating. This would not only be important for NATO's northern flank, but would also send a very strong geopolitical signal to Russia and China, she said at a wind energy summit in Hamburg. Okay, wind energy summit. All right, let's let that pass. We are working toward this. And at the same time, we are talking bilaterally with the United States about issues that concern us and the United States. There you go. There you go. We are talking bilaterally with the United States. That's right. So negotiations are happening. Negotiations are happening. Okay. My goodness. Okay. That's why he is who he is. Oh my goodness, my screen is frozen. The screen is frozen. Let's see if we can get it. Okay. Okay, all right. All right, let's see. Also going on now in Japan, as you know, there's an election on in Japan now, and let's see, the election date is what? Oh yeah, a week from Sunday, right? Yeah, a week from Sunday, the 8th. Yes, I believe so. It's a very, and this is how they do it. They do it a very short electioneering, because I mean, politicians are always electioneering, right? So why drag it out? Let's see, what am I doing here? All right, and so Takaichi is mentioning Taiwan again, and let's see here. Japan could not ignore a Chinese invasion of Taiwan, says PM. Okay, well, that's certainly true. China moved to take the island by force, but maintained Tokyo would act within the limits of its legal framework. on a nationally broadcast TV program on Monday. The prime minister said a military crisis in Taiwan could instigate Japan and the U.S. to take joint action to rescue their own citizens. All right, so this is what, who is this? This is MSN. This is what they're describing as a walkback. Um, well, and I guess she's trying to sort of appease China a bit here. Ties between Japan and China sank to the worst level in years after Ms. Takaichi, just a month after taking office last year, triggered a diplomatic row by claiming that a hypothetical Chinese attack on Taiwan could bring about a Japanese military response. But yeah, she said at the time that it would be an existential issue, I think she said, or something like that, right? So um, anyway, Beijing responded with export curbs, flight cancellations, and vitriolic commentaries, repeatedly demanding a retraction, and she has not retracted that. China claims Taiwan is part of the. I want to make it absolutely clear that this is not about Japan going out and taking military action if China and the United States come into conflict, Ms. Takaichi said, referring to the comments she had made in Parliament in November. Now, so let me remind you what's going on here. Japan, with its what they call the Peace Constitution, Article 9, that we've talked about Article 9 before, and I've shown it to you. It says that Japan renounces war as a way of solving international problems, and it also will have a military, but it actually does have a military, and a very strong one at that. But one thing important is that Japan, even to this day, still says that it will not join in any kind of a collective security agreement. In other words, no NATO type of thing. And it does, of course, have a self-defense treaty with the United States, but that's not a collective security in their view. And so if there's a war between the United States and China over Taiwan, Takaichi is saying that Japan is not going to go out and take military action. Well, we'll see. But Japan has islands right there, right? We saw, what is it, about 100 miles or something like that from Taiwan, which they will defend. And they've already placed radars and other military sort of installations on those islands on what is it, Yonaguni Island, just off the Taiwan coast, which you can see from Taiwan on a clear day. So it's almost inevitable that Japan will get drawn into a war, one would assume. And I think maybe Takaichi is sort of leaving that part unsaid. So that's sort of the quiet part, I guess, that she's not going to say right now, especially right now during an election time, because she does not want to alienate people more than she has to, or more than she already has with respect to the China issue. Although right now in Japan, China is very unpopular. And so I think her hard line on China is actually one of the reasons that she has such a high popularity rating of more than 70%. If something serious happens there, we would have to go to rescue the Japanese and American citizens of Taiwan. In that situation, there may be cases where we take joint action. And if the U.S. forces acting jointly with us come under attack and Japan does nothing and simply runs away, the Japan-U.S. alliance would collapse, she added. So, yeah, so she's really walking a very fine line here. So we would respond strictly within the limits of the law, within the limits of the laws as they currently exist, while making a comprehensive judgment based on what is happening on the ground. Okay. All right. You can understand that to whatever you want it. With an eye on the upcoming snap election, Ms. Takaichi stopped short of retracting her remarks from November, saying her stance was consistent with Japan's longstanding policy, which it was. She also said that China's characterization of her remarks was inconsistent with the facts. Japan's pacifist constitution prohibits direct military action but allows it to defend itself as well as the US or another friendly country in the event of an attack that Tokyo deems a threat to its survival. China on Monday yet again urged Japan to correct the erroneous remarks made by Takaichi in November as the foreign ministry issued fresh travel warnings. In other words, and right now China's advising, or shall we say recommending, or it's a dictatorship, all right? So advice has a very different meaning than it does in other countries, but advising their citizens not to travel to Japan during the upcoming Lunar New Year holiday, the Chinese New Year holiday, which of course is a big holiday and travel time for China. Beijing urged its citizens to avoid traveling to Japan for the Lunar New Year, citing public security threats, of course. Fu Kong, China's permanent representative to the UN, claimed that the Japanese Prime Minister's erroneous remarks constituted interference in China's internal affairs. Her statement, Mr. Fu claimed, was a betrayal of the international obligation that Japan must fulfill as a defeated country. So they're always working that in. That, hey, you guys lost the Second World War. Remember? You guys lost it, right? So stop acting like you don't, and that doesn't matter anymore. If you lost the war, then permanently for all eternity, you will be a defeated country. This is what China wants Japan to believe. And they also want America and Europe also. This is the line that they're trying to sell to the US and to Europe and to all other countries, and to Korea as well. Remember when Lee Jae-myung went to Beijing, President Lee Jae-myung of South Korea to Beijing, what did Xi Jinping say? He said, our two countries fought Japanese militarism. We fought it together. That's a bit of a stretch to say that, that the Koreans, there was, of course, sort of independence fighters in Korea. There were sort of guerrilla fighters that fought mainly in northeast China, not on the Korean Peninsula, but China is now trying to say that the Chinese Communist Army and the Korean independence fighters worked together to fight Japanese militarism. It's a bit of a stretch, but of course, the war ended after two things happened. One was that the United States began dropping atomic bombs on Japanese cities, and the second thing that happened was that after the United States did that, then Russia, the Soviet Union, Stalin suddenly decided that he better get in on the action before it was too late, and they invaded into northeast China, into Manchukuo, which was a sort of puppet state of Japan at the time, and routed the Japanese army. It wasn't much of a fight. They routed the Japanese army in Manchukuo. And then Korea became independent, but divided. Independent but divided. Yes, tragedy. All right, so for the obligations that Japan must fulfill as a defeated country, right? This is the slogan that they've been throwing at Japan now. The Chinese foreign minister, or one day, okay. In recent weeks, public security in Japan has deteriorated. Well, if you ask Japanese, it's because of the prevalence of foreigners, or especially Chinese, in Japan, with crimes targeting Chinese nationals on the rise and a series of earthquakes causing injuries. The ministry said, yes, the earthquakes. All right, so interesting. So, yeah, Chinese Communist Party with its lies, right? Oh, they're the ones that are upholding international rules completely. They're the ones that are in the United States, and Trump is the one that is destroying the old order, and China is trying to maintain it. So Canada, Europe, please come and join us as our subordinates, as our subordinate powers, to maintain equitable and multipolar world. Lies. Okay, but why do I think basically, why are the Europeans falling for this? Why are the Europeans falling for this? Well, they don't like Trump. It's a one part of it is that. Certainly, a big part of it is that. Um, but Xi Jinping looks like Winnie the Pooh, and he offers stability, right? Stability. Of course, that's stability under the gun, but it's stability. And uh, they are making their choices. That is for sure. That is for sure. All right, now I want to do a story that probably has nothing to do with anything, but it's so weird that I just want to do it anyway. I've never lived in LA. I've never lived in LA. Maybe some of you have, and maybe some of you are familiar with what's going on here. But I don't know, it just caught my eye. Um, okay. Search for bodies, guns in LA's notorious MacArthur Park is suddenly halted by lefty pole as California Post watches on. And just the headline itself is so weird that I couldn't not read it. So there's apparently, I don't know, apparently there are a lot of bodies. I don't know. This is wild. So, oops. So, okay, a high-tech search for dead bodies, guns, and other criminal evidence dumped in MacArthur Park Lake was halted at the last minute on Monday morning on the orders of a socialist councilwoman. Wow, so there's a lake that has a bunch of bodies in it and guns, I guess, and other criminal evidence. Apparently, this is where people dump when they kill someone. This is where they dump the body, I guess, huh? Well, that's good to know. Okay. The California Post, I guess that's a newspaper or something, was told by park rangers they shut down the planned operation on Monday morning that they shut down the planned operation. And the operation was canned at the last minute after the intervention from LA City Councilwoman Eunices Hernandez. Her office did not immediately return calls to comment. The shutdown happened moments after the Post arrived on the scene, despite the search mission being months in the planning. The operation was designed to scan the bottom of the murky lake for human remains, weapons, and other possible criminal evidence long rumored to be submerged there. Okay, this is the lake here. Okay. Local businessman John Ale, who helped organize the effort and co-founded the Santa Monica Coalition to address homelessness, said it grew out of conversations with people whose loved ones disappeared after spending time in or around the decrepit park. Ale hired sonar and remotely operated vehicle specialist Robert Fallon, whose work typically involves scanning oceans, harbors, shipwrecks, and municipal infrastructure in zero visibility, high risk environments. Al said he reached out to city officials in advance and was told he did not need a special permit to proceed because the operation posed no environmental disturbance. No one was set to enter the lake and nothing would be removed from it. As recently as Sunday, Ale said park rangers confirmed the crew had the green light. That changed when Fallon's team arrived Monday morning with their equipment staged and ready. Al said the lead park ranger told him the operation had to stop, first saying that Hernandez, a Democratic Socialist of America-backed lawmaker, had stepped in, then later saying her office had called. Rangers threatened to arrest the crew if they didn't halt the operation, Al claimed, and ultimately issued the team a parking ticket as the project was shut down. People were bent over, shooting up, overdosing right next to us while we were being shut, Al told the Post. I pointed it out and said, do you think that might be more important than what we're trying to do? Because when they die, that's going to be a bigger issue. The Post has spent more than a month reporting from MacArthur Park and has repeatedly witnessed the same bleak conditions described by Ale and Fallon: open drug use in broad daylight, people slumped unconscious on benches and grass burned, and benches and grass, burned debris from overnight fires, needles scattered near walkways and playgrounds, and needles scattered near walkways and playgrounds, and trash piling up along the lake's edge. And also, the motivation behind the operation wasn't political, it was humanitarian. 40,000 people live within 1 square mile here. Families, kids, this used to be one of the most beautiful parks in Los Angeles. Now people are scared to walk through it. We wanted to show the city what's really happening above the water and below it. Fallon said his team regularly works in environments where visibility is zero, using sonar to identify submerged objects without disturbing them. The same technology, he said, would have allowed crews to identify anything resting on the lake bottom, from wheelchairs and bikes to guns, knives, or bodies, without putting a person in harm's way. Fallon said the conditions at MacArthur Park made traditional diving unsafe. This is one of the dirtiest bodies of water I've seen, Fallon said. You've got layers of trash, debris, dead animals, human waste, needles, all of it. There's constant dumping going on. Sonar would have picked up everything without putting a human being in that water. It'll also address the question many residents and investigators ask, but rarely hear answers to: how bodies could remain hidden in a shallow public lake for years. We kept asking one question: how are the bodies not surfacing? Ale said, and what we were told is that they're weighted down, tied to bicycles, wheelchairs, whatever they could find. During Monday's visit, an ambulance arrived and transported a person who appeared to have overdosed while activity in the park continued around them. The California Post reached out to Hernandez's office for comment, including whether she or her staff directed park rangers to shut down the operation, but did not receive a response by publication time. As of Monday afternoon, the sonar search had not been rescheduled. So this is, I guess, what it's like in LA today. I'm sure it's not like this in all of LA, but MacArthur Park. There was a song about MacArthur Park, wasn't there? Is that the same MacArthur Park? I suppose it is. Back in the 60s or 70s, I seem to remember. So I guess this is another one of those sad commentaries on what's happening in American society right now. And well, as we always say, the solution here is the family. The family needs to be strengthened, and there needs to be a revival of the family structure in America for situations like this. And these people who are overdosing, they all have parents, and somewhere, and uh, if they don't have parents, and well, if the parents are not alive, then they may have aunts and uncles or siblings, cousins, some sort of family somewhere, and and uh, but it's disconnected from them, and I guess, well, there's a reason. There is a reason for their disconnection, but what those reasons need to be dealt with. Yeah. And really, I don't know why the Democratic Socialists of America, the communists there, did not want to find out what is in the lake. And I guess it's because if they find out what is there, then someone will come in and start dredging the lake and start bringing up all kinds of bodies and guns and so forth. I suppose that's why the communists didn't want this happening anyway. All right. Weird story, weird story, weird story. Okay. All right, let's see. Yes, the left is still trying to focus on the situation in Minnesota. I see here that Bill Clinton issues dark warning about Trump after deadly shootings. But of course, we've heard many, many dark warnings about Bill Clinton, but they want us to be distracted away from that. Uh, and they're doing their best to sort of to escalate that story as much as they can. Canada's Prime Minister Carney says that Canada will shield Greenland from the United States. Sounds a bit strange. Yes, I'm not sure how he's going to do that, but of course he's only saying it for political effect. Hmm. Says here that ban on deporting U.S. citizens removed from DHS funding bill, Congresswoman Warren. So that sounds strange. Of course, deporting U.S. citizens is already illegal. Here, rapid buildup of Chinese military fuels corruption scandals. We have, what do we have here? We have a couple minutes. Trump says Iran has called repeatedly to seek a deal. And big force of U.S. naval ships headed toward Iran. And Venezuela's oil surge could shift energy markets. Yeah. And they're going to revamp the FAA, commit $6 billion to air traffic control modernization by December 31. That's a good idea, finally. And NASA is set to launch a first manned moon rocket in 50 years. Well, because the Chinese are also doing it, so they don't want to be left behind, I guess. And we talked about this one yesterday, why CCP grabbed at Chenxi before the US could. And the British FBI being created. What Texas teaches you about survival. Oh, I wonder what that is. Let's take a look. When I moved to Central Texas, I was immediately struck by how little vegetable farming was happening. Not small backyard gardens, not serious orchards, not diversified crop systems. Almost all visible agriculture had disappeared, replaced by sprawling homes, decorative landscapes, and endless Bermuda grass. People spoke nostalgically about what used to be here, parents who grew corn, grandparents who planted rye and winter oats, families with pomegranate trees, fig trees, and pear trees that needed no irrigation and produced so abundantly that their fruit was turned into pear butter, pear sauce, even homemade alcohol. Everyone had a story, almost no one had proof, at least not where I live. When I began planting my orchard, I drove the back roads and neighborhoods, scanning people's yards the way farmers always have. I saw a pear tree and thought, let's do pears. I spotted an elderberry and added elderberries to the plan. I checked our growing zone, cross-referenced charts and ordered trees that were supposedly meant to be there. I even crawled under two barbed wire fences and hiked along the bank of a dry creek on my neighbor's land to take cuttings from an infamous pomegranate tree that survives there without irrigation. My goal was to propagate more of that nearly mythical no water needed pomegranate. Of all the cuttings I took, only one rooted. It now lives in my greenhouse, and I have high hopes for that plant. Everywhere I turned, people warned me about this soil. It's too alkaline, too rocky, too depleted, too dead. I wasn't worried about the soil. I know soil. I know how to bring it back to life. I know how to coax microbiology into abundance. All right, well, that's all the time we have today. All right, yes, but okay, Texas taught this woman how to something about survival. All right, great. Today is Tuesday. Tomorrow is Wednesday, so we will have another OSTP session. So I will see you then. God bless, Godspeed. May his kingdom come quickly.